What's up, y'all? Welcome into another edition of the DNVR Rams podcast presented by our friends at Branded Bills. Head to brandedbills.com. Use that code BBDNVR for 15% off of your first order. Hope everybody has had a nice week. It's been kind of a weird schedule. We had to rearrange some things. Went live yesterday, also going live today. I think we'll be back to Monday, Friday next week, and then possibly moving to Tuesday, Thursdays for the rest of the off season. I'm going to try and keep it somewhat consistent for you guys, just so you can get into the routine of things. I understand how it goes when you've got your routine, you're used to the show being published at one point, and then we move it around. It's a chaotic time between the Rockies starting, the Nuggets and Avalanche getting into the playoffs, a lot of NFL off season, so it's a lot of moving parts to work around, but we should get some stability here coming up. If you're rocking live on YouTube and wouldn't mind hitting us with the thumbs up, I'd certainly appreciate it. Say what's up in the Toyota chat. Shout out to Sky, always showing love, which I appreciate so much. We've got a fun show for you. We're going to be a little bit all over the place in the second half. We're going to be joined by Tyler King of the Denver Gazette. Going to pick his brain a little bit on some recent moves. Randy Bennett left St. Mary's for Arizona State. Going to ask him his thoughts on whether that hurts their viability potentially in this realignment carousel. Are they still a good option for the Pac-12? We'll talk Utah State. Jared Calhoun, obviously Cincinnati bound. I threw out a couple of CSU guys yesterday that would make sense. It'll be pretty interesting to see where they go with that hire. Tough spot. 6th coach in 12 years is never an ideal scenario. That said, they seem to be able to continue to keep this thing going despite the coaching turnover. It'll be their 3rd coach in 3 years. But they continue to win, so it'll be really fun to see kind of how that plays out, see where Utah State fares as far as their status in the first year of the Pac-12. Had Calhoun come back, had they been able to run it back with Templin and Falslev and some of those guys, I think they would have been quite formidable. Will still probably be competitive, but I do think this potentially opens up a window for CSU. We'll talk about that, how the Rams can kind of make a leap next year, potentially biggest off-season needs, how he thought things went in year one, get him to put a letter grade on it and that kind of stuff. So we'll talk all of that in the second half of the show. I'm going to focus on football here in the beginning. I'm also going to be joined by my guy Christian from the DNVR Rockies podcast. He's been helping us out doing some producing of late, which I've appreciated. But it's opening day, so I thought we could kind of do a little draft of the best stretches on the sports calendar. Kind of ran through it briefly at the end of yesterday's show. But opening day, Super Bowl Sunday, I feel like it's kind of a fun debate. It'll be fun to pick his brain a little bit on some of this stuff. Obviously, the first scrimmage of spring ball is tomorrow. I will be there. I'll have some written content. We'll have some videos for social and Monday's show as well. I think we'll probably get to hear from Mora and a couple of players. Not 100% who will be there covering it, but I know that I will be out there for sure. So be locked in on the website. We'll have, again, written takeaways. We'll post some stuff from social. We'll talk about it on the pod. Will be very interesting to see how those QB reps are divvied up, who is able to stand out as far as the skill position guys go. How does CSU hold up in the trenches? Can they move the ball at all? Talked about it a little bit, but I don't want to get too carried away, so take it with a grain of salt. In the couple of practices I've been to this point, hasn't really felt like the offense has gelled just yet. I don't think there's reason for panic. I don't think that's surprising, even given the roster turnover, but it would be encouraging to see the offense move the ball a little bit, get some guys going, create some excitement, for 2026. Off of that, I kind of wanted to start here just with 5 pretty basic things that need to happen for CSU to turn things around. It's been a tough decade. You've only had 2 winning seasons in the Canvas Stadium era, 9 seasons. You've had 2 bowl bids, 0 postseason wins, 33 and 66 since the on-campus stadium opened. It just has not been the stretch that was envisioned when they opened up that facility, and it's kind of crazy to think we're basically back in late Fairchild territory where you're hoping for a savior to come in and rebuild this thing from the ashes. Hoped that Norvell could be that guy. Just didn't play out the way any of us thought it would after him being so successful at Nevada, literally thumping CSU in his final game with the Wolfpack. Torrey Horton and some of those guys balled out. It's been as bad as it gets, and that's because not only have they been largely uncompetitive, and they've obviously lost a lot of games that mattered, rivalry games, bowl games, basically any matchup with stakes that's felt like CSU has come up short. It's been rough every September. Part of that, I think, is scheduling, opening up in the big house in Texas and all that. It sounded great 10 years ago. Now it's kind of just proven to be deflating and not a very fun way to start your season. So I kind of like that trend is changing here. You want to play some bigger schools, but you want to play bigger schools who you have a chance of potentially competing with. I feel like you want to get some positive momentum rolling. And I think that the administration is doing a good job, whether it's eliminating some of these bye games. I know it's somewhat of a disappointment for people who had some of these trips planned and now those games are not going to happen. Like they're not going to play that Oklahoma game. They're not going to play at Wisconsin. It's going to allow CSU to continue its streak of matchups of playing the border war continuously, which I think is really important. And I'm excited about that, but also just competitively in the playoff era, you want to do whatever you can to give yourself the best opportunity to win. And CSU is doing that by tweaking the schedule a little bit. Playing 7 home games every year is the goal now, which I think is smart. You've got to take advantage of that. But there are a lot of things that you can look at that have held CSU back. And while the players have changed, the staffs have changed, there have been a couple of pretty basic areas where the Rams have just not been strong enough now for the vast majority of the last decade. Certain stats you can kind of cherry pick and pinpoint small stretches that were frankly outliers, but it's not like it was necessarily a train wreck in every single one of these components for each of the last 10 years, but largely both sides of the football, really special teams too. CSU has not been good enough. And so I kind of went through the numbers here and I highlighted again, this is not rocket science, but I pointed to, some areas where CSU needs to improve if they're going to have a chance of getting where they want to go. Like when Canvas Stadium was opened, we had visions of jumping to the Big 12, being in a power conference, and you are moving conferences now, probably not the way that you would have hoped for back in 2014, back in, the height of the McElwain era, where it felt like CSU had a chance to make the real Big 12, not the Big 12 without Oklahoma and Texas, but the actual version that we knew and loved. A lot has happened. You're going to the Pac-12. It's not the Pac-12 of old, but it is an opportunity to potentially get something positive going here, which has just not happened despite, a gorgeous facility and despite, spending. It's not like it's been for a lack of effort. CSU institutionally has invested in athletics at a high rate, have not got the results. If it's going to happen, first things first, you got to score some points. Like, again, this isn't rocket science. I'm not acting like these things I'm pointing out are some grand revelation or something like that. But CSU hasn't had a top 50 scoring offense nationally since 2017. They averaged 33.4 points per game that year, the first year in Canvas Stadium. That was 31st in the FBS. They were actually 28th in scoring offense and 26 at 35.3 points per game. As much as the Bobo era fizzled out in a real dramatic way, you can point to injuries. I still think if Colin Hill doesn't get hurt, 2018 and 2019 look a lot differently. But those offenses, especially late in 2016 and for most of the 2017 campaign, really moved the ball well. And it's unfortunate that the Rams never played much defense in the Bobo era. But those teams, like, that's 7-5 teams just barely kind of scraping the acceptable standard. And those offenses were light years from what we've seen over the last decade. I mean, it's been brutal despite, all the success that Norvell had at Nevada with Carson Strong. They ranked 17th in scoring offense in 2021. They were 46th in 2020, the year before that. Never even got close to that at CSU. Never even topped the top 75. 76 was the high water mark for scoring offense. That was in 2023 when CSU finished 5-7. And despite beating Boise State for the first time, despite feeling like they were close to turning a corner, that season ended in heartbreak and really put a lot of pressure on the last 2 years. We all know how that played out. But over the last decade, CSU has averaged 93rd in scoring offense. And that's a pretty simple recipe for disaster. It's got to change if they're going to score. A big part of what has held the offense back, obviously, has been the inability to maximize a quarterback. They've got to hit on a QB at various points. There's been hope. You felt like maybe this could be the guy. Colin Hill, injuries aside, I think had all the tools. I think he could have been potentially a guy who plays on Sundays if he didn't blow out his knee 3 separate times. It is what it is there. Todd Centeio, another guy who maybe in a different world could have been something bigger at CSU. He certainly looked a lot better after transferring to James Madison than what we saw at CSU. So I think that falls, again, on the program's inability to maximize him. Patrick O'Brien had some moments. Clay Millen, obviously, as a former 4-star guy, had a lot of hype coming in. He very quickly proved to not be the real deal. BFN, you saw the raw tools. You saw what he could potentially be in small glimpses of, like the Boise State comeback. He moved the ball well in Boulder despite the results, despite turning the ball over too frequently, which was a problem with him throughout his career. They just did not get enough out of that quarterback position. CSU has not had above average QB play with any sort of consistency really since Nick Stevens. Like Hill, it's not his fault given the injury stuff, but Nick Stevens is somebody who statistically is one of the best quarterbacks in program history. Now, I say statistically because I think that's an important caveat. If you were doing a draft of the top 3 most gifted quarterbacks to play in this program, I don't think physically Stevens is one of those guys. I think he ran that offense to perfection. I think he did about as much as one could have expected him to do. Like he maximized every ounce of potential that he had in his collegiate career, and that's a testament to him. The funny thing is, back in the day, Bobo was so just dead set on having competition at the quarterback position, almost to a fault, I felt like, in the moment. But in hindsight, I kind of get it, because I think Norvell's biggest downfall in the end was getting complacent and basically putting all his chips, on Braden. It just did not pan out the way that he hoped. He really put his career in Braden's hands, and it just did not play out the way that he hoped that it would. Bobo had a guy who I feel like really ran the offense incredibly well, but he was constantly trying to find somebody who physically could take them to the next level. Coleman Key and all these different guys that he brought in to battle it out with Nick Stevens. I felt like he was being a bit much in the moment, but in hindsight, I get it, because you can't get complacent with that position. And that's why I think it's a good thing that there is some competition right now. If I had to put my money on who the starter is going to be, I think it'll be Haas Haney. I think his potential, I think what he can be physically is just on another level. Like, he's got physical tools that we just haven't seen around here, maybe ever, certainly as a runner. But he throws a nice ball too. He's got a nice compact motion. But I do think Farrar, having been in the program for a year and having played for Price Tracy, knowing, kind of what he wants from the position, that gives him somewhat of a leg up, coming in. I think Haney is probably going to be the guy. If you put a knife to my back and said, Justin, who's starting week 1, injuries aside, I think it'll be Haney. But I don't think you can get complacent with that position the way that CSU did in the Norvell era, because when it doesn't work out, and the reality is it doesn't work out for a lot of quarterbacks at this level, you see, the position that the Rams have been in these last couple of years. They put all their faith in one guy, And when that didn't work out, there was really no other viable option in the room. And that's why I think it's exciting that not only do you have these up and comers, I guess is how I would tab them, and Haney and Farrar potentially, but you also have, Emmanuel and Kelly coming up, and those guys both physically are really intriguing. You just need options, but you need one of these guys to figure it out, man. It's been far too long since we've seen above average QB play at CSU. Let me take a quick breather real quick. Shout out a couple of our partners. We'll wrap this up. We'll get Christian on. We'll get Tyler on. It's going to be a fun show, so make sure you guys stay tuned in. Trucks have always been a part of Toyota's DNA. For generations, they've built durable legends destined for greatness and perfect for Colorado. If you're looking for something to hit the high country, maybe you want to go on a ski trip, hit Winter Park, something like that. Maybe you're just going on a road trip across the state. You want to see the sand dunes, you want to hit the slope, something like that. Toyota, they always have you covered. Whether you're conquering off-road trails or hauling the weight of the world, there's a Toyota truck that's just right for you. Check out the Tacoma, check out the Land Cruiser. They offer 17 models with available all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive like the Epic 4Runner. They also offer more low and zero emission vehicles combined than any other automaker to give customers numerous choices to reduce their carbon footprint. 16 hybrid vehicles to choose from, like the Tundra iForce Max hybrid truck, but not to be outdone, Toyota SUVs take command on the road and on the trail, so you can explore the road less traveled without sacrificing smooth city rides. And SUVs like the RAV4 and Grand Highlander, Toyota is a proud partner of CSU Athletics. They are the official vehicle of DNVR. Toyota, let's go places. I also want to shout out our friends at Raising Cane's. If you need a Cane's fix, order at raisingcanes.com on the Cane's mobile app, where every chicken finger is hand battered and cooked to order just for you. Every crinkle cut fry comes from grade A premium potatoes. Each thick sliced Texas toast is lightly brushed with Cane's garlic butter blend and grilled on the griddle to golden brown perfection. Most importantly, the secret recipe Cane sauce is made in restaurant every day. Fix those hunger cravings on the go now on the Cane's mobile ordering platform. Raising Cane's chicken fingers. One love. Getting clowned in the chat for the Rockies jersey, the vest. They don't do the vests in baseball these days, but in the early 2000s, this was a fit. This was one of my favorite birthday presents of all time. I've had this hat and this jersey both for like 15 years. They're about half my life. It's been tough as a Rockies fan. We know it. I'll joke about it with Christian a little bit here in just a couple of minutes. A couple of more keys. If CSU football is going to go anywhere in 2026, if the Jim Mora era is going to be more fruitful, which I think at the moment we're all cautiously optimistic for what this can be. I think given the circumstances, CSU made about as good of a hire as one could hope for, but there are no guarantees. We've already talked about the need to score more, to hit on a QB. I think another couple of elements that factor into that, you got to run the damn ball. CSU has not effectively rushed the football in a long time. The stats weren't awful in 2024. Morrow got it going a little bit. I know he technically was a 1,000-yard rusher with the bowl game. But at the same time, when you went back and looked at the third and shorts, the fourth and short yardage scenarios, the red zone, the Rams were really ineffective. They couldn't run the ball when they absolutely needed to. And it's been a big part of why this team, along with, not hitting on a quarterback, has really failed to meet any type of expectations. They ranked 126 on rushing yards per game last year, averaged less than 100 per game at 97.2. Again, 2024, the numbers weren't awful. They were better. 163.5 rushing yards per game. That was good for 58th in the country. So not awful, but I do think those stats are a little bit misleading based on CSU's inability to run the ball in key situations. But really, over the course of the Norvell era, you're 126th last year, 58th the year before that, 123rd in 2023, 126th the year before that, and then 56th in 2021, the final year under Adazio. Over the last 5 years, at best, you've been a middle of the pack rushing attack. With more consistency, you've been one of the worst rushing offenses in the country. And again, just going back and diving into some of these Bobo numbers, it's funny, statistically, those offenses really were so impressive, especially compared to what we've seen of late. But they ranked 35th in 2017 at 194.6 rushing yards per game. They were 30th the year before that, over 215 yards per game. Those are the best rushing offenses we've seen post McElwain, certainly, post Capri, really post Sonny. I mean, Capri was kind of an outlier in his 1 year with what he was able to do. And I think some of that rushing success needs to be attributed to how good those O-lines were. Didn't hurt that you had Garrett Grayson under center either, and you really had to respect him. Looking at UConn, they ranked 62nd in rushing yards last year at 155 per game, but certainly far better than what we saw at CSU. They averaged 192.7 rushing yards per game in 2024. That was top 25. It was 23rd best in the FBS. Can you split the difference and average like 175 on the ground this season? I think if you can do that, that's a sign you're moving the ball with consistency, likely better in the red zone than what we've seen of late. And I think given Haas Haney's skill set, you should be able to juice those numbers a little bit, right? Like if you're using him effectively, you should be getting, at minimum, I would feel like 30 to 50 rushing yards per game out of him, depending on how they use him, depending on how much success you're having creating explosives to the passing game and all that. You've got to run the ball with more consistency if you're going to have any opportunity to be competitive. You've got to establish a number one receiver too, or pass catcher may be the better way to phrase it. I don't care if it's a running back coming out of the backfield. I don't care if it's a tight end, and that tight end room looks damn dynamic. Your top receiver had 388 yards last season. It was Rocky Beers, and that got greatly juiced by the last couple of weeks and meaningless football matchups. Caleb Goody led CSU with 436 yards the year before. It's just not good enough. I'm not saying you have to have a 1,000-yard receiver. Ideally, maybe you don't if you're able to spread the love around, if you're able to maximize all these guys, Vereen, Sperlin. If you can get Mosley and Vic going, maybe Maher can find a rhythm this year. Still not giving up my stock on him. Can you get somebody to 750 and a couple more, north of 400 to 500 yards? But the fact that your leading receiver, not your third or fourth guy, has been around 400 yards each of the last two seasons, it's just indicative of inconsistent passing attacks. But it's a big reason why this team has not been good. They just have not been consistently explosive enough. They haven't scored enough. They haven't really at any levels been able to strike fear into the heart of defenses. And it's a big part of why CSU has just been so meh at best. Like, you've got to find some consistency there. And part of that is finding guys who can truly establish themselves. Like, you got to go back to, obviously, Torrey had a first couple of great years, but the team was bad. Trey was great, but the team was bad. I'm not even asking for Rashard Higgins or Michael Gallup, but can you give us a BC Johnson type season at this point? Joe Hansley, something like that. That's how starved we are for success out wide. And that's no disrespect to either of those guys. Two of my favorite CSU football players, had both of them on the show. Good dudes. Turnover margin. The last thing I want to point to here, CSU has only been positive in turnover margin once in the last 5 years. That was 2024. They've averaged about 81st in turnover margin over the last decade. They've only been in the top 50 twice. They were exactly 50th in 2017. They were 44th in 2020 when they only played 4 games and went 1-3. That works on multiple fronts, obviously. That means you've got to be more dangerous defensively. You've got to create more havoc, which I think in theory was the plan last year under Summers. Injuries kind of prevented that from ever being a realistic possibility. We'll see what they're able to do this year. I like some of the guys that have come back. I like Diamande and some of these dudes they've added through the portal. So I'm cautiously optimistic for what that defense might be able to look like, for some of the pressure they might be able to generate on the quarterback. But they've got to turn opponents over more, and they've got to obviously protect the football better than they have for the majority of the last 10 seasons. They've just been... They've been bad, they've been boring, they've been predictable. It's the worst combo. Like, at least during some of those Bobo years, you knew they weren't going to play any defense, but it might be a fun shootout like that 2016 game against Air Force in the Springs. I think back to 2007, 2008, some of those stretches early in the Fairchild era before the wheels completely fell off. Like, again, they didn't play any defense, but you were in for a lot of 44-36 type games. The BYU game and 08, I believe, was, one of the best examples of that. So if nothing else, I just want to see some points on the board this year. I don't know if you're going to be a championship contender. I don't know if you're going to be a 10-win team, something like that, push for the playoff. That feels maybe like wishful thinking as of now. We got to see this team actually do something before we start, getting big-eyed and thinking, oh, what could this be? We'll have to see. But I just am desperate to see a non-dreadful offensive experience, and I don't feel like I'm asking for too much here. We're going to get Tyler King on the show in just a couple of minutes to talk hoops. I did want to bring my guy Christian on if he is willing. He's got a busy day. Rockies opening day. I do want to shout out Christian real quick, and not just because I'm trying to butter him up because he's doing me a solid by hopping on the show. But look, I haven't exactly covered the most successful stretch of football over the last 10 years, so I know what it can be like when the fan base is dejected. You're trying to make a miserable product seem interesting. You inherited a really brutal spot. Like post Nolan, not only had the Rockies been bad, but people were straight up just fed up. You've made that beat fun again. And I'm like genuinely excited for the Rockies season for the first time.
Thank you, man. Oh, yeah. I appreciate it. It's funny you were talking about, how, you obviously don't know what you're going to get out of CSU next year, but you just want them to like score more, right? Make the games more exciting. I feel the same way about the Rockies, where I'm like, you go back to the old Blake Street Bombers back in the day, where you're like, hey, at least they were scoring a ton of runs, even if sometimes they were losing. They were losing 10-8 type of things. Pitching has always been terrible, but yeah. So I'm in the same boat. I'm hoping that we can at least have some fun baseball this year and some fun football this year to go with it.
I threw these out yesterday just because I was talking about this exact concept. How like if you're a CSU football and Colorado Rockies sicko, if you happen to have that specific overlap, like I have for much of my life, the Rockies have lost 90 plus games 11 times in the 30 years I've been alive. I put it at 90 because when I did 85, it was 21 times. 21 times they've lost that many. CSU's lost 7 or more games 13 times. Like I'm due. I need something from these teams, just a little bit of happiness.
A little bit of hope, a little bit of happiness. Yeah, who knows? Who knows? We'll see. I mean, I know there's a long way to go, but baseball is a beautiful sport, and that's what I tell people. I get it. People are upset with the Rockies, and understandably so. But baseball is too beautiful of a sport, in my opinion, to completely unplug from. No matter how bad you think the ownership is, no matter how bad the team is, it's just it's my favorite sport, and we've got a beautiful place here in Colorado to go watch baseball. So I'm going to stay locked in on it because I'm a true fan. I stick with it, through the ups and downs. But I'm excited for not just another season, but opening day, man, right around the corner. It's a good time.
On that concept, I'm curious, like, where does opening day stand for you in terms of the biggest days of the sporting calendar? I know you're a baseball guy, so I imagine it's pretty high, but I'm curious, like, is that number one? So we don't have to go super long on this, but I wanted to do just kind of a quick draft, 3-4 rounds. We can just alternate. It doesn't even need to be snake, but I'll give you the first pick. What's the best day? And it's got to be annual. Like we'll eliminate the Olympics and World Cup to simplify things. You've got to pick like one day, one round. Like you can't get the entirety of the MLB playoffs, but you could say the World Series if you wanted to. Like
that's
I'll throw a couple of rules out.
Yeah, I was gonna say if I could go with like game sevens, if we're getting specific there, but if it's something that happens every single year, because you might not get a game 7 of the World Series or even of the playoffs every single year. I think opening day is consistent, so of course my bias in me wants to go that way. Super Bowl's obviously got to be super high up because it's just no matter what, it's a national holiday. But personally, yeah, I'll go with opening day. That seems fair and biased as I can be.
I like it, on brand, which we try to be. So I'm going to stay on brand as well. I'm going to say, and this is maybe cheating because I get 2 days out of it, but round 1 of the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, that's a good one.
It's always going to deliver because you'll get a little bit of chaos. You'll get to see some great talent. Who knows? Sometimes things can get wonky as it goes on, but I feel like those first 2 days always deliver.
Yeah, and that's interchangeable for me. So maybe this is 2 and 3 with Stanley Cup Finals. And I truly, again, biased from baseball, but I think the Stanley Cup playoffs and Major League Baseball playoffs are the most elite playoff atmospheres, even above college football. And as great as college football can be, I just think, from a professional standpoint, like those two are the top. So I go Stanley Cup Finals, at least third on that list, right behind March Madness.
Sniped me. I guess I'll go Super Bowl Sunday because we can't let it fall out of the top here. I think anything that truly like brings the casuals in and creates interest in the way that like March Madness and the Super Bowl can, that kind of elevates it to a different level because everybody gets involved. Everybody, they want their bracket. They're into the Super Bowl. It's a cultural thing more than just sports.
Yeah. I see Taylor in the chat says Rams home opener in football always gets the juices flowing. I feel like anytime it's the first game of the year for your team, whether that's football, basketball, baseball, it doesn't matter what it is. The first game, there's nothing like those feelings of like just like waking up and being like, I don't know what to expect. I don't know what to happen. I mean, for us, who knows? It could end up being a total mess, but we get to find out today. Like we get real meaningful games starting today, and that's just the best feeling in the world.
We'll cap it at 3 because I don't want to keep Tyler waiting too long. Give me your third and final pick, the best annual moment on the sports calendar. You've got opening day, you've got the Stanley Cup playoffs. I've got round 1 of March Madness and the Super Bowl.
I think.
Where are you going with your final pick?
I think you got to go college football championship at this point, right? I mean, I'm a big NBA guy, but college football still is a step above that. In
the national title or the semis, though, because you could take either.
Let's go both. Let's go both because I mean it's they're both I think on the same level for me. I mean, the playoffs and the championship in college sports I think hold equal grounds in my book. Obviously, you want your team to get to the championship, but both, if you're just a casual fan, you don't have any skin in the game, both are just elite viewing.
All right, I'm gonna go because you got NHL playoffs. You sniped me on that one. I think I'm gonna go. I'll go NBA Finals, I suppose. Like it's high level basketball, tends to deliver. I don't know. I think I like your 3 better though.
You could throw like the Masters in there.
Masters Sunday especially is awesome.
If you're a golf guy, yeah, but it's more niche, right? It's not as widespread, but there's some good ones in there for sure.
All right, man. Do you have anything you want to plug? Obviously, check out all of they've got written pieces on the site, preseason podcasts, which will be relevant even throughout this first weekend. Anything else you want to push for the baseball fans?
You want to watch along tonight? If you guys are willing to come crash out with us tonight when the Rockies inevitably blow a lead in the 7th inning tonight, we'll be live watching that. Yeah, like I said, you don't know what's going to happen this year, but you're along for the ride. So that's where we're at, man. Happy to jump on and chat with you anytime.
Awesome, guys. Make sure you follow everything Christian has going this season with DNVR Rockies. They really do make that team fun, despite being the Rockies. We all know what it is. Does feel like they're operating like a real team, though. Like there's potentially a way out, which has not been the case for a long time. We're going to get Tyler King of the Denver Gazette on the show. He's been waiting long enough. Let me shout out a couple of partners real quick, and we'll get my guy TK on to talk some hoops, future Pac-12, and more. All right, are you looking for gear to make your brand stand apart? Look no further than Branded Bills. Whether you need snapbacks, truckers, fitteds, beanies, or tees, Branded Bills has you covered with performance and style. If you want gear to make your brand stand apart from the crowd, Branded Bills has you covered with the best custom headwear. Start your order. Their dedicated team will help you create the exact custom apparel that you need. We've got awesome hats through Branded Bills, as do many local companies. They give you a variety of options, which is great. I've got a couple of their CSU hats, which are part of their on-campus collection. Head to brandedbills.com. Use that code BBDNVR for 15% off of your first order. I also want to talk to you about my friends over at Xfinity, specifically their 5-year price guarantee. What if you could have reliable and intelligent Wi-Fi? What if you could keep it at the same price for 5 years? You can with the Xfinity 5-year price guarantee. Imagine Wi-Fi that makes everything in your home work together, that finds and fixes problems before you even notice them, like super intelligent Wi-Fi with a 6th sense. Lets you stream the game even when the whole family's online. All your devices working in perfect harmony for 5 whole years. Here's the best part, y'all. No annual contracts, no hidden fees, plus Xfinity's best equipment comes included. Take it from me, a lot can change in 5 years. Championships are won, records are broken, coaches are hired and fired, dreams grow bigger. Your Wi-Fi should stay reliable and the price should stay put. Lock in your price and unlock the possibilities with Xfinity. Learn more at xfinity.com. Xfinity, imagine that. Select plans only, restrictions do apply. All right, let's get my guy TK, Tyler King of the Denver Gazette on here. How you doing, my man? Thanks for waiting around a little bit.
No, not a problem. Always happy to come on. I'm doing well.
Have you been locked into the tournament? How's your bracket doing?
Not too bad. Had my first Final Four team lose last night with Houston, but still got my championship game all squared away. I had Arizona over Duke, and I had Arizona winning it all. I was tweeting about this a little bit last night, but I just think Arizona is like the most perfect college basketball team I've ever seen constructed, like 1 through 8, with how well they complement each other. And I got to see the team in person earlier this year. I talk about them on my own podcast, but I think they're an awesome team to watch, and that's why I'd winning it all. So they're still in it for now.
It really does feel like this might finally be Arizona's year. Admittedly, I came in with a little of the Arizona stink in the tournament, which isn't fair to them. Like the tournament's such a random process and how it plays out. But I don't know, man. I'm with you. I think 1 through 8, that's maybe the deepest, best constructed roster in the country.
Yeah, I think so. And it's definitely the best Arizona team since that Aaron Gordon team in 2014. I think that team was also really, really good. It had a bunch of future NBA guys on it. But this team, I just don't see any flaws on it really when they're all kind of playing well. They just absolutely destroyed Arkansas last night, and you could tell from 5 minutes in how that game was going to go given Arizona's size advantage. So that they're just a really, really fun watch. And I like to pick teams I like to watch to win it all. Last year I had Florida. They were really fun. I think it'll be a fun rest of the tournament too. Some of the games tonight I think will be good, like Duke St. John's, all that. It's been a really, really fun tournament.
Let me ask you this. Did you take CSU to beat Memphis last year in your bracket?
I did, yeah. I had them beating Memphis and losing to Maryland. So I had that exactly right.
I had them beating Maryland. It was with my heart. Although,
I mean, they should have won.
Travel. So. Obviously, we're going to spend a lot of today's time talking CSU hoops. I want to pick your brain just kind of on year one, where the team goes from here, roster needs, all that stuff. Before we got too deep and too into the woods, I did want to pick your brain a little bit on another team who you talk about on your podcast and who will be in the Pac-12 with CSU. That's Utah State. They won the regular season conference title. They won the Mountain West tournament. Really impressive showing this season. I felt like they got kind of a raw deal as a 9 seed, but they showed out about
Absolutely.
as well as you could hope for, like given the circumstances. But Calhoun's obviously gone now. It's going to be their 6th coach in 12 years, which is brutal. I guess just like, can Utah State keep this up? Like, can they sustain this level of success with this turnover? Because at some point it feels like you're going to miss.
Yeah, at some point you're going to miss, but I don't know why. I don't know why can't they? Is my other question, because they've
already done it 4 times.
Yeah, they've done it. They've done it how many times this decade already? Consistently finding the next great coach. And I have plenty of names that you could look at, and I think there are some that would be more like in terms like just guys that you feel like would stick around for a longer, and not like a Jared Calhoun or a Danny Sprinkle, who is just kind of looking for. I don't even think Jared Calhoun was a guy that was like looking for the next job. Like he was at Youngstown State for a long time, but his alma mater just happened to come open. It was very much like I think he could have had a Nico Medved kind of arc at Utah State if Cincinnati didn't come open this past year, which is his alma mater. He's also a West Virginia guy too, a little bit. And I know he was kind of in the running for that last year. But he decided to stick around at Utah State. So I think if it wasn't Cincinnati, Jared Calhoun would still be at Utah State and could have had, like I said, a similar run to what Nico had here at CSU, like where he's there for 6-7 years before taking the one job you feel like he would take to kind of elevate himself. So, so there's plenty of names you could look at, and in either regard. Like you want like a more consistent guy that you don't feel like is looking for the next job or just looking for the next up and coming coach. But Utah State's got the resources. I know they already lost Carson Temple to the portal. Falslev is obviously once again for the third straight offseason going to be the big kind of swing piece. Like if they keep him, then you're looking at maybe keeping some of the other guys too. But Utah State, like CSU, is kind of willing to invest in basketball and build a winning, continue to have a winning program, which they've had for a bunch of years now. They've obviously got a great home environment. I think behind Gonzaga, even with a coaching change, like I ranked this in a story I did for the Denver Gazette earlier during the season, but I think Utah State behind Gonzaga is the pretty clear number 2 team going into the new look Pac-12 in terms of the program investment, all that kind of stuff, and just kind of recent success. So I don't think there's any reason.
San Diego State?
Yeah, I do actually. Like I just think like what they've done the last couple of years, and obviously San Diego State's made a national championship game this decade, so maybe that's a little bit silly. But I just think what Utah State has built in terms of a culture and an ecosystem, it's just built to continue to have a winning basketball program, which I think is commendable. Just for someone who loves college hoops, I think they've done a really, really good job building that place to where if you have the right coach, and I think there are plenty of great coaches across the country that would want this Utah State job. If you have the right coach in place, you can continue to win, even if you're if you're having to turn stuff over every.
Might have froze up. Oh, there we go. Who would be your top guy if you were Utah State?
I think you and I have both posted about this various places, but I think Tim Miles would be one of my first calls. Like I think
Somebody
if you're
save
actually
this man from San Jose, damn it.
Because I think Tim is an awesome coach, and I think he's done a great job at a variety of places. Obviously, the Nebraska thing didn't work out at the end, but he had a decently long run there, and people are just kind of, at least nationally, are just learning now how difficult it is to win at Nebraska, them just getting their first NCAA tournament win this season. So I think he did a good job there for a lot of time. He brought in a lot of talent, some guys that made the NBA, or at least had a cup of coffee in the NBA, which you don't see a lot in Nebraska. Obviously, I think Fred Hoiberg is a great coach too, obviously getting Nebraska to the Sweet 16. But I think Tim would be a great option if you're looking for someone who is not just kind of looking for the next job afterward, because I think Tim, at this point of his career, obviously had the success at CSU, jumped not right to Nebraska, but made the move to Nebraska, which was his kind of big money move for him in the Big Ten at that point. So, and then now at San Jose State, this last couple of years, kind of doing the most with literally nothing at his disposal, with that program, getting guys like Colby Garland, turning them into all the players. Like it hasn't really resulted in a ton of success on the court, but you see the talent development and all that kind of stuff. I still think Tim is a great coach. I think he's looking for maybe just one last job like this at Utah State, where he's got resources and ability to win, and he could just spend the last, whether it's 8 to 10 years of his career at one place and really enjoy it and win a lot of basketball games. And I think he would be maybe my first call. I haven't seen him brought up a ton with people that are really plugged into Utah State, so maybe it's not really a consideration. I know obviously Craig Smith is going to be a conversation there, and I know the fan base is not, from what I've seen, is not super jazzed up about that.
To get over leaving for your biggest in-state rival.
Yeah, that is fair. Like I'm not a Utah State fan. I'm not going to put myself in their shoes, but so I understand that. But I think Tim would be one of my first calls. Otherwise, yeah.
I'm really rooting for Miles. I feel like maybe he doesn't have the juice with his name anymore that he had even a couple of years ago. And when he didn't get out with that, Amari Moore run, that was maybe the window. He almost got the New Mexico gig pre-Patino. The dude can coach, though. You just see it so clearly every year. They're frisky. They're a pain in the butt. They always have a couple of upsets that, screw one of the top teams in the league. I feel like he's a no-brainer if you want somebody who might actually appreciate what that gig is and stick around. But maybe they're not worried about that. Maybe they're just trying to get, let's just get the best coach possible. And if we have to replace him in another year, then we'll replace him in a year too. We'll just deal with it as it comes. Still with me, TK?
Nope, sorry, I lost you there for a second, but I'm back now. What was the last thing you said there? Sorry about that.
No, just I think I think he makes a lot of sense if you're looking for somebody who'd appreciate what that gig is. I'm curious because you're also on the same page with me as adding St. Mary's would just be a fun move for this league. I obviously understand the business of it and all that. It gets complicated. Does Randy Bennett leaving change that conversation for you at all?
Maybe. I still think the St. Mary's brand has built itself up over the last 2 decades with Randy when in charge, that I still think it's a worthy addition. And like, I would be going after Santa Clara and San Francisco too, just to really, really expand, and not just to weaken the WCC, which is your strongest competition in terms of like a West Coast, only basketball league. But I think all three of those programs, if you include St. Mary's, are all worthy. Like, obviously Santa Clara made the tournament this year. They were a buzzer beater a half court buzzer beater away from making the second round. And who knows what they could have done against Iowa State in the second round. Like that's a solid program. They've sent multiple guys to the NBA as first round picks this decade with Jalen Williams and Brandon Pajemski. And San Francisco's obviously got such a great basketball history with Bill Russell. As the legendary player from that program. So I think all three of those would be teams or programs that I would be going after to really expand the Pac-12 and make it this elite, West Coast basketball league. And I think, even though St. Mary's, I know a lot of people have said that lately with Randy Bennett leaving for Arizona State, that maybe St. Mary's just kind of riding Gonzaga's coattails, but I don't know if I fully agree with that. Like, I think you got to have some ability to get talent, and I don't think that's just a Randy Bennett thing. I think St. Mary's done a good job for a long time in bringing in talented guys. So I think St. Mary's would be, if you're just looking for one addition, would be my top choice. But I would still be trying to get Santa Clara and USF as well to really beef up the new look Pac-12.
I'd be all for leaning into a Big East version of, on the West Coast, essentially, if you can just get all the basketball brands. Shoot, at that point,
I think the new Pac-12 is already pretty close to that, to be honest. Like, I do too. I did an analysis of this in another story I wrote for the Denver Gazette. I think it was in February. Just like, if you look at the last, like, this decade, the new look Pac-12 teams have had almost just as much NCAA tournament success as the current Big East has this decade, outside of UConn's 2 national championships. It's very even otherwise. I think the median Big East team is going to be better than the whatever the median new look Pac-12 team is. But I think as a whole, like, the ceiling is there for this new look teams in the Pac-12 to compete just as much as the Big East has.
So, kind of turning the conversation to CSU here, obviously the hope is to play a factor in this new look Pac-12. Gonzaga is going to be the preseason pick to win the league probably every year. That's
at least until Mark Few's gone. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, it just is what it is. They will definitely be the heavy preseason favorite going in, but it does feel like there's an opportunity there to be in that 2, 3, 4 conversation, depending on what happens here with the roster, depending on what happens with Utah State and San Diego State. Obviously, that'll
both
be
those
a big
teams are going to look very different next year for sure.
And Boise too, potentially. It sounds like Fiedler might be dipping, which would be a big loss for them. Or Fielder. Fiedler is the CSU commit. Fielder plays for Boise State. So get used to that one. But what are your thoughts on the program? Like, was this a successful season in year one? Came up a little short in the postseason, so we can kind of separate those a little bit and talk about them. But how are you feeling, I guess, in terms of how this first season went for the program under Ali Farokhmanesh?
I think it went about as I expected. I thought they could be a top half of the Mountain West team. Obviously, ended up finishing 7th, but a win against Boise on the final day gets them into the top half of the conference. And 21 wins, making the NIT, which is kind of what I thought they were going to be going into the season. Like, yeah, I wasn't expecting them to make the NCAA tournament this year. I know a lot of people were hoping to kind of ride the high of the last couple of years, but I felt like this was always going to be a little bit of a reset year. And the way Ali built the roster, to me, it felt like next year was always going to be the year they were shooting for. Like, you're kind of now in college basketball trying to build 2-year windows for success, unless you're a top program that is consistently churning out, rosters and bringing in top talent year over year. Like, if you're a program like CSU, you're looking to maybe reset the roster every 2 years or so, Get guys who will stay for a year, 2, maybe even 3. Out of the portal or as freshmen. And I think they're always kind of looking at next year, just given the makeup of the roster with only Jevin Mooney's as the lone senior on the roster. You're obviously going to lose guys. You expect that every year. But if you can maintain the majority of this roster and keep the bulk of it together, I think you're looking at a really, really solid team going into next year that's had a year of playing together, a year of use of the system. And they've had to make a lot of adjustments this year with how much the offense struggled at times, especially when, I mean, if threes weren't falling, like this offense was not that great. Now guys like Jace Butler emerged off of that as guys that can get to the rim and take advantage of other things that this offense can open up for you. But I think it was a year of growth for Ali as a coach because he'd been rolling in his role and just kind of really comfortable in that for the last 4 or 5 years under Nico, and now he's in a little bit of a different role. I think he's had a year to adjust to that, and I think they're in a really, really good spot, barring they keep the majority of this roster together, which I saw Ali was on Steve Ivey's show earlier this week, not giving away any names or anything, but it seemed like he's pretty confident that the guys that they really want to come back, the majority of them are going to be back. So I think that's a great sign that they will be a top 2, 3, or 4, top half of the new Pac-12. They'll be a contender for that going into the next season. I think that's the baseline for this group, because I do think the NCAA tournament is very realistic for this group next year if the majority of it sticks together.
I went on yesterday's show, and I haven't tweeted this yet, but I reported that based on what I'm hearing, and it's obviously nothing's official until you get the announcements, but I am hearing that Kyle Jorgensen is going to be back, Kerry Booth, Jace Butler, and Rashawn Bembar back. Sounds like Rex Steiner probably not going to be back. But I feel like if you can keep those guys, that's a pretty good core hanging on to potentially Butler and Booth and Jorgensen. That's about as good as I think you could hope for realistically.
I think Butler and Booth are the biggest guys that you really want to hold on to. And I think Kyle, you could put him in that group as well, just given how good his non-conference was. Now, he didn't have nearly the same level of production in Mountain West play when he became a top of the scouting report guy. I was super encouraged by Jace Butler's emergence, during the winning streak in particular in February and down the stretch of the season. I thought Kerry Booth had a really solid season overall. Like the highs weren't too high and the lows weren't too low, which I think is a really, really good sign for a player like that. I think another year in the system and just an offseason of development with his body and just his game as a whole. Ali has always talked about, individual player development being a core tenet of the program. I think I think that's probably the biggest key. Hate to say it, I think Brandon was a quality player for this team. Same for Josh Pasquarelli before he went down. I think those guys, played well. But I think the one thing if you're saying this group is missing, and maybe this is just Jace Butler, but a guy who can just really create space for himself and create offense for himself when things aren't going well, which is something I think we saw this team struggle with offensively at times with a lot of those like shot clock violations or just like late shot clock offense. Someone's got to make a play. I think you're just missing a guy that can create his own shot, whether it's in the mid-range or kind of getting to the rim. Like I said, I think Jace developed into that a little bit, but I don't know if that's fully his game. I don't know if he's like a fully like a full true point guard kind of thing. He's more of a combo guard. So if you can find that out of the portal, if you do lose a guy like Brandon or Josh, I think that's key. But just keeping the big guys, I think, is the biggest thing. And then maybe you're trying to find somebody that can replace what Jevin did, because if you're looking at like Mountain West only stats, Jevin was their most productive and complete player in conference games, and he was super important to what they were doing in February. So maybe you're looking for that kind of player in the portal as well. But I think, keeping Kyle, Kerry, and Jace is the biggest thing for me. And if you're confident in that, then I certainly am as well. So I think that's certainly a good start for Ali in the offseason.
I'm with you. It's funny you brought that up. I kind of talked about on yesterday's show. I don't normally go live on Thursdays, but my schedule's been kind of wonky. I dove into the need for a shot creator. I'm with you. I feel like they need somebody who can handle ball pressure better as far as the facilitator goes, whether it's a true point guard or another combo guard, just somebody who can create for themselves when things get a little bit hairy. I don't know post-sneak if they really had that this year. I think there were instances like Jevin could do it a little bit. Rex Steiner could create his own shot a little bit. Jace is somebody who can get to the rim, but I don't know if he's somebody who like thrives in that, pull-up jump shot late in the clock type situation. If they can get somebody who's experienced with the ball in their hands, can create a little bit, assuming they hang on to those guys we've talked about, I think the potential with this team is pretty high next year.
Yeah, I think so as well. Like, I think you're going to need to have size in the new Pac-12. Like, the teams that are moving on to this from the Mountain West into the Pac-12, and obviously with Gonzaga, are all typically the bigger teams in the conference, whether that's San Diego State or Boise. They always have big teams. Even Utah State has done a really good job adding size recently. Now we'll see if they can hold on to those guys. Obviously losing Templin hurts, but Adlin Elamine had a great season for them. So keeping Jorgensen and Booth and Bemba together as a trio in the front court, I think is really, really good. And I think those guys can all play together and can complement each other in different ways. So I think that's a great start for Ali. Like I said, the guards are just kind of always easier to find in the portal, as CSU has found. CSU hasn't had to find them because they had Isaiah Stevens for so long, and they had Neek and Cayenne last year, season before. So it'll be interesting to see who Ali can go out and get, or who kind of what fits his play style. But I'm really intrigued to see what this team could look like next year, with kind of the core that they will likely have to continue on from this past season. I think there's a really, really good chance this is an NCAA tournament team this time next year.
Tyler nailed it. We've talked about it a lot, but that's the Xfinity X Factor presented by Xfinity. Imagine that. Roster retention. If the Rams can retain the majority of their talent, they should be in a good spot. I think a lot like what Tyler said, the belief when you brought in guys like Jace Butler, like Kerry Booth, let's get their feet underneath them. Let's get them comfortable. Let's get them playing with consistency, which is something that neither of them were able to do the year before at their previous stops, And as the season went on, we saw those guys start to scratch the surface of what they can become. So retaining some of those key guys, Kerry Booth, Jace Butler, Kyle Jorgensen, that's the Xfinity X Factor presented by Xfinity. Imagine that. Before we get out of here, is there anything you want to push? You're a busy guy lately. You're covering DU hockey. I don't know if you're going to be at the CSU football scrimmage or not, but there's a lot going on.
Yeah, I always underestimate how busy time of year March is, and that's even without, for the first time in like 4 years, I wasn't covering the NCAA basketball tournament, but I'm actually driving up to Loveland shortly for the NCAA hockey tournament. DU's hosting that at Blue Arena. They play Cornell later today. Western Michigan, Minnesota State are the early game. So, and then the winners play on Sunday. So it should be fun. Hopefully it's DU Western with a spot in the Frozen Four on the line on Sunday. That'd be a lot of fun. I've been covering a lot of DU hockey lately, even though I'm more of a basketball guy, as you know, but DU is always a fun team to cover. So go to DenverGazette.com to check out all of my DU hockey coverage in the lead up to today's games. And I'll have plenty from the weekend as a whole. And yeah, I think I'm going to be up at the scrimmage tomorrow. I haven't got a chance to come up to check out Jim Mora's squad yet, but it seems like it's been fun up there with this new look team on the gridiron as well. So looking forward to getting to see some of that action as well.
It'll be fun to see kind of how the QBs are divvied up as far as reps go. Like Haney is certainly the presumed front runner, but does kind of seem like Farrar's getting an extended look here. They've got a lot of new guys at the skill positions. If anything else, you got to get out there just to get guys' numbers in your mind. Yeah. Any new players, man, it's a lot.
Yeah, it certainly is going to be a whole offseason of trying to figure out who's even on this CSU team and getting to the coaching staff as well. But I'm excited for what the Jim Mora era could bring at CSU. So he's kind of in a similar spot to what I mentioned, or what we talked about with Tim Miles and Utah State, like just a guy looking for that one last. Now Jim was in a good spot at UConn where he could win some games, but just kind of that one last spot for he could really kind of elevate it the last part of his career. So a little bit of similarities there.
TK, you're the man. Thank you for hopping on with me. As always, guys, make sure you're following him on Twitter. Make sure you're subscribed to his podcast, reading his work. Does awesome stuff with the Denver Gazette, and he is quite literally all over the state. He's in FOCO, he's in Boulder, he's at Magnus Arena covering DU. He'll be covering some WCC basketball with the Piles moving to there. And it's always a blast when I can get him on here and chop it up a little bit. Thank you, everybody, for locking into the content. Again, might be a little bit wonky with next week's schedule as well, but we should be able to get some consistency for you guys throughout the offseason. Then we'll be back to Mondays and Fridays come football. Thank you for listening to the DNVR Rams podcast presented by Branded Bills. Head to brandedbills.com. Use that code BBDNVR for 15% off your order. Much love, y'all. Always proud to be. Peace.
We all silly like the mayor.